Hi, I'm Max.
I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to What the Adaptation, the YouTube show where we review adaptations from one form to another. Rebecca's on special assignment tonight, but we have a returning guest. Jenn, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here again. I'm excited to talk The Witcher 2.0. And then it's nice to meet you, Max. First
Yep.
time talk. So this ought to be pretty fun, and I'm excited. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite episodes, one of my favorite stories too.
Mm-hmm.
The whole, what would you call it? Engagement feast?
Yeah.
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 Meat market?
Yeah.
Meat market?
Yeah.
I
It's
think
kind of that.
I think Calanthe said as much.
Yeah. I think she did.
So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the episode. Oh, what's the full name of it? I did edit this. Hold on, I lost the title.
Of banquets,
Of
something.
Banquets, Bastards, and Burials.
That's what
Episode
it was.
104
Mhm.
of The Witcher. It covers two short stories, in fact. It covers pretty much all of A Question of Price, and also parts of Sword of Destiny. Not the full story, but just parts. Leaves Geralt out of that part.
Mm-hmm.
But we get to see Ciri's adventure on that. So, Max, we'll start with you. What are some changes from the source material in this episode that you liked or didn't like?
So it's kind of tough because when you first watch the show, you have an idea what goes on. Then you read the books, and the story with Ciri and the Dryads was really confusing in the books, knowing what happens in the show, because like it just didn't feel like it was set right against the show. But then you watch the show and realize it's off from the books.
Yeah.
But it makes more sense in the show a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Because like you don't really have much interaction with Geralt and Ciri early in the books, except for that one little encounter with her and the Dryads and getting captured. And
Well, he did see her playing in the courtyard with all the little boys.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like it's just this random little adventure, and he's off again doing something else.
Yeah.
Whereas in the show, it's like he doesn't really meet her much
Until the
sort
very
of.
end.
Yeah.
Which is kind of disappointing, I think, but it works for the medium.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that actually kind of follows the book, at least him meeting her. Like that last scene plays out pretty much the same.
Oh, at the end of the season 1 finale. Yeah. Very, very close. You know. Jenn, what was something from the source material you liked or didn't like? Changes.
I'm going to piggyback kind of a little bit off Max with saying that in that entire Dryad sequence was a little bit different there when it was, because I think it was Geralt and her, and then it was just her pretty much in that other guy by herself in the woods, which isn't how it happened in the books. But also we also get Yennefer and the whole running with the baby through the portals and that kind of thing going on. And that was a little bit different. I kind of liked it, but
I actually do too.
I enjoyed that. The whole thing where she like buries the baby and stuff like that. It was very, very touching. But it was definitely a deviation. And I know on the first episode that I was on with you guys, we talked about how obviously the time skip is a lot different how they're doing that in the show. So just kind of playing off that. And then you have like the triptych of, Geralt and then Yenn and then Ciri and everything that they're doing kind of
all at different times.
Yeah, obviously, you have what Geralt's doing is before Ciri is born, and then you have Ciri the Dryad for it. It's definitely like a mix. So I kind of like how they're painting the story, but it is really a different pace than the books. So yeah, that would be a big difference. Yeah.
I like the addition too of the Yennefer stuff. We have to keep give something to her because we haven't gotten to her story, her textual story yet. So they're having to come up with stuff, and this one makes sense. And I liked hearing her bitching and moaning about not just being the court mage and how it's just fixing screw ups for the last 30 years. And I really liked her little speech to the dead baby
Yeah.
sitting there on the beach. That was, I know it wasn't something Andrzej Sapkowski wrote, but I could totally see him having written that little speech.
Yeah.
And it just, one thing I didn't like about that is she did not bury that baby deep enough.
No.
That baby's crab food within a day. But, oh,
yes.
I mean, it is.
Yes.
Look where she's burying it,
Yeah.
just under the surface. That's like, what's the point? But I when it comes to the Brokilon Forest stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't feel right to me. Like, I'll go with you guys. It actually felt wrong. It just didn't work for me as much. And it also had the most annoying thing the cinematographer did in the entire series. It's those freaking bright lights in the background in the forest.
Oh yeah, the
That-
lens flares and stuff like
It
that.
wasn't even just a lens flare. It's like way back there on the other side of those trees, we've got a big old flood lamp pointed right at the camera.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, every single shot practically had that. And I was just, this does nothing. I know he's trying to give an air of an illusion of magic and mystery to Brokilon Forest, but to me, it just fell flat. It felt like they were on a sound stage with an audience watching that was just being quiet. Like there's like, it was almost like being, it was like, it felt like the sitcom TV, just, it felt so fake, even though it's obviously, I'm pretty sure they were in actual woods there, but it just felt, imitation. Now everything in Cintra, on the other hand, I loved. My favorite changes, I've always liked the character Mousak. Ever since the first time I watched the show, and then when I read the books. And
me too.
I like the fact that they, instead of having Mousak be a stranger to Geralt, that they actually know each other, that they have a history. That worked for me. That gave a nice touch. Next.
In the books in the forest, who was the guy that was with Ciri? Was that Mousak or was that in the books?
The show or in the book? In the books,
the books.
The guy who's in the forest is not a Cintran guard, Frexinet or something like that. But I can see if I can find it here.
Because that was one part that they changed out of there, was that essentially when he was captured by the Dryads, he was basically like their sex toy for children.
Mm-hmm.
And they completely cut that out of the show, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they talk about how the fact that occasionally like a Dryad will have a intimate relationship with a man, like kind of in the books, but it was kind of just like you say, Max, kind of like a castaway like situation, just like for fun and absolutely no emotionally unavailable Dryads is what I'm going to call them. But
right,
I know. Yeah. I remember Geralt was like if you stay here kind of thing, like don't do anything, just
don't make the first move.
yeah,
just lay back and just have no joy, because if you do, you're gonna die.
Yeah, you're there for their sake, and it's not about pleasure, it's about making a baby.
And
like I said, in the show they got rid of that, which I said isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially considering it's her and the elf boy, and you don't want to really touch on that.
Yeah, Dara's a bit too young to be using a stud. A bit too young. Ciri's a bit too young to be too, but the actress was actually 18. I was surprised to find out. Actually older than that now.
Really, Freya? Yeah. She was 18? I thought she was. I didn't think that she was.
Well, when I looked it up like a year or two ago, it said she was 18.
Well, I have news for you about all those high school dramas. A lot of them are like 30 years old.
Yeah. Charisma Carpenter was 30 years old as Cordelia on Buffy season 1. Same age I was when I was flipping through the channels and decided to stop and check out this show. All right, our next question. Do you see any plot holes or issues that might be faced by the changes they made?
Actually, I think it's kind of, if you don't mind me taking the first, I think it's like a reverse of plot holes because of what they're doing a little differently. I think, in fact, even though, you know, the books are well written out past the show, obviously. I think the way that they handled the Dryads was better in the show than in the book. I think the whole, like you said, engagement feast was almost pretty much on par with what happened in the books.
Yeah.
Like it was extremely like the book. So that was executed beautifully as far as I'm concerned. Like that was totally fine. I like you said, Glenn, I didn't like how it was shot. Now I may not have the aversion toward it that you do, but I understand what you're saying. But like I just thought that it was just, I thought it was, there was no plot holes whatsoever. And like you said, they added the whole, like I said, they added the scene with Yenn and the baby and that whole thing going on, but they wrapped that up within the episode. The baby's dead, the queen's dead. There's no entanglements of anything will happen with any future plot there. The only thing you get is kind of, you know, the audience feeling kind of sorry for Yenn and getting like a soft spot for her and her infertility issues, which is a common theme throughout like the books and the show. So I actually think that this was a pretty well-rounded episode. It explained, you know, the gift of promise. It explained kind of, you know, where you get Geralt having, you know, Ciri and their bond there together. And it kind of lets you know what Yennefer has been up to with some backstory into her, and it kind of wraps that up as the side quest, and it was done. So I actually, it's the like the antithesis of a plot hole. This was pretty well summed up, this episode, singularly. I think it did a good job.
I do have to ask though, does Yenn go back to the court of the king that she was working for? The one who was about to just casually toss aside her life along with the guards and his queen and his princess?
Everybody. Yeah. No. That could be a plot hole, I guess, obviously later on.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm wondering. Max?
Well, we know that from the book she like becomes like her own little sorcerer thing in that one village with the genie.
Oh yeah. That's it's a city, but yeah, it's a city.
Yeah. So like she's just kind of off doing her own thing. So it's like, you know, that's kind of what she does. She may work for a king here, but then she just goes off and is a witch in her little area. So it doesn't really say, it just kind of like opens up for her to not be in that kingdom and be on her own.
Just remember how much she fought to get Aedern, you know, to be back to whatever the country is where Vangenberg is from. King Aedern was. That was the job she wanted last episode, you know, and she screwed Fringilla over to get that episode. She went through the enchantments and the transformation without the drugs to numb her pain so that she could get that job. That's why I wonder if she just walked away completely or what, but who knows? We might find out down the road.
She did gain, what, 30 years of notoriety for working with the king?
Yeah, it might even been a second king. That first king probably died, and the one that sent the assassin was probably the son of the second or the first king.
I have no idea. But like, you know, working for some king for possibly 30 years, that's going to add to your reputation a bit. Give her some wealth that she may not have had before.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I don't have any gaps in my resume. Here it is. Job security, I guess.
But you know, you're right. This episode for the most part does tie up everything except for like inconsequential things, like where does Yennefer go after that, you know?
Or Geralt not knowing this guard that was with Ciri that we don't meet again, really, maybe once.
Yeah, the one that used to be a cormorant.
Something. The one that was with Ciri and the Dryads, like we meet him once or twice and then never see him again.
I think that's the only story we meet him in, Proxenet or something like that.
Yeah, I don't see him. We don't see him after that.
No. It would have been interesting to see him on TV show, but you know, not needed.
In the books, was Dandelion in the wedding?
Dandelion was not at that wedding.
Not at that, no.
No, Dandelion was not there. That was a Dandelion free episode. Neither of these short stories have Dandelion or Dandilion.
So, how old is Dandelion supposed to be in modern time? Is he even alive?
Well, yeah, he's in the main books.
He's
So
Jaskier is Dandelion, and he's
Yeah.
in
Because
there
if
a
he's
lot.
young before Ciri's born,
Oh,
Yeah, I know. There's going to be the age discrepancy
Mhm.
that's
with
a
at
good
least.
point.
I mean,
Max.
Yen and Geralt.
is he
You
half
don't
elf?
expect Geralt and Yen. You don't expect age, but
Yep.
Buttercup, Dandelion, Jaskier, whatever you
Mhm.
want to call him, horse's ass.
Mhm.
Maybe he's a
Yeah.
secret god. We don't know.
I mean, he should age up, but we don't know what he's going to look like when they get to. Well, I mean, we saw a little bit in season 2, but
He's
that
just the
doesn't
Witcher's
seem.
version of Q.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's funny. That would be hilarious, actually, because him and Q have the same kind of brash personality. That would be
Oh my
really funny
God.
if he had Q's powers.
Not there to help, just to be in himself.
I could
And-
see him with like the little mariachi outfit dancing right along with Q. Like I could
Oh my
so
God.
see him.
Yeah.
Really. So him. That's so him.
A Star Trek Witcher crossover.
There you go.
See,
That's
I was going to
amazing.
say that a question of price, basically told me that the Witcher, the world that the Witcher's on, is a planet in the Star Wars galaxy, because it kept talking about the Force,
Oh yeah, it did. It
and
did.
it was capitalized too. And I'm like,
The capital F. Uh-huh.
I mean, why do you think I would think that? Not like I like Star Wars or anything.
I know you're a pretty big Star Wars fan. That's very nice.
So yeah,
You
I
know-
see the word the Force capitalized like that. I'm like, Jedi.
Geralt has a certain track record against swamp creatures.
He does.
Yeah, I just.
I'm just picturing Geralt wandering against Yoda and like trying to kill it.
Oh, that wouldn't happen.
Yoda would win.
Yoda would just lift him up into the air
Yeah.
and float him, and Geralt would be like, I can't do anything. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
You just Eithne.
Yeah.
He can
Maybe.
use a sign, but I don't know if the force that Yoda has would prevent the
Maybe Yoda could absorb
be
it into that
interesting.
ball like he did with the ball lightning. Just take the sign of Ard energy and just
yeah.
throw it right back.
Well, in the game, he has a sign that will reflect damage back
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
as well.
Mm-hmm. He
See,
does.
that's right. I'm talking to two game players here. The closest I've come to playing the game is I've watched about 3 hours of playthrough, cutscene playthrough, without much of the combat. I downloaded one off YouTube, and it's like a 17-hour video, and I sat there and watched 3 hours of it. I can't watch anymore.
Well, the Wild Hunt is what this story and stuff is all about. Witcher 1 and 2, like the characters really aren't touched on. It's pretty much all
I heard that they take
Wild
place
Hunt.
after
Witcher
that.
1 was very hard to follow.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, but yeah, it was pretty goofy at the time that I remember, but it was fun. It was fun. It was campy. I was like, all right. But I'm pretty easy. Like any sort of like RPG dungeon crawl, anything, I'm fine. So, I have to realize I'm the target audience.
I mean, you just got done playing a game that's 30 years old.
But that's what I do. Like I play very old games. Yeah, I love Betrayal at Ground Door.
I gotta go back.
I could sit and talk about it all day long.
Have you read the books yet? Read the books.
The Rift. Oh, Condor the Betrayal. Yeah.
Read Magician, Silverthorn, The Darkness at the Southanon, and then the Empire trilogy: Daughter, Servant, and Mistress of the Empire. Those are great.
I have.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say that the quote from the very first episode of this, where Geralt says something about being through an apocalypse and into days or something, that could be a game reference because of the first game.
My lore of first game is spotty. So it was a while since I played that one. So if I don't remember, I apologize about that. You'll probably remember better than me.
The TLDR of like the first game is like there's some wizard kid child thing that's like into the world and Ice Age.
Mm-hmm.
And he prevented that with some time travel shenanigans. It's bizarre.
See, that makes me think, because somebody told me that
really weird.
Some of the games, a couple of the games take place after the books.
I don't know.
And I'm like,
But it's like when the very first
No.
episode where he says he's been through like in the days or apocalypse or whatever, like he done that, and gone something else.
Mhm.
I think that was a reference possibly to the first game.
Hmm. I do notice they're pretty good at throwing in just little lines on the show
Mhm.
that are from somebody entirely different in an entirely different situation, and using that same line from one character in the book and then giving it to another character on the show in a different way. And the one that stood out, it's a silly little line, is in the show, Dandilion, Jaskier is taking the beer away from Geralt, says, "No, I want you to have you need to have a clear head."
Mhm.
And there's a scene there's a line just like that. I think it was Calanthe saying, "Drink a beer, but carefully, because I need you to have a clear head." And the words were almost. I was reading it again today, and I was like, I just watched it last night, and I was reading it today, and that line just boom, like it's another one that they're doing. But
That was before in the books where she's asked him to sit next to her, and she was asking him, trying to get him to do a contract with him, if I believe,
Yeah,
if I'm
yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Before Urkion showed up.
Yeah, that was before things got messed up really quick.
So that brings me to the next one. I'm going to answer this one. Scene you most remember, most enjoyed. Well, Urkion showing up as from the moment he showed up at the feast, that stuck in my head. If I was, before I rewatched it, it was the one thing I remember from 2 years ago when the show came out. I couldn't tell you any other scene, but I remember the hedgehog guy.
Yeah.
I didn't know his name, couldn't remember his name until I read the books. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know this story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I didn't like the hedgehog face that much, but I guess they did. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, it could have done better. I don't know why. I don't have it. That's a pithy thing, I guess, for me to say, because they did a really good job. I don't know why I think that.
yeah.
But,
It was still better than the original Sonic version before they changed it.
oh my god.
Oh.
Let him talk about that. So true. That was bad. I'm so glad that they retouched it. They had the animators went in and said they scrapped it. Yeah, it was bad. Very bad.
Like
Very
a week
bad.
before release or something.
Yeah, it was so bad. The audience engagement was like, and it was warranted. Anyway, but yeah, it's a good reference.
Yep.
But yes, 100%, Glenn, 100,000%. I thought that was really beautifully done, especially when Pavetta like screamed, and like that whole sequence where like, because I guess you're going to ask this later, so this is going to be touching on a question you'll ask later on the show, but like if I didn't read the books and I didn't know what was going on, I would not have expected her to jump up and scream it with the force and her using that. That was definitely that would be a really cool thing if I didn't know how that was going to end. So I really enjoyed that entire sequence of from when Geralt is first walking in to how it ends, and obviously with her being pregnant and everything was just very crazily written. So
and Geralt's line when he sees her puke, "Pavetta, are you?" And he just walks away.
That brings me to my favorite scene was exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where he declares law of surprise, she bends over, vomits, and he's just like,
yeah.
I was just watching it at work or something and like just listening to the offside, and that scene hit, I'm just dying of laughter.
Yeah.
Something about that just tickled my funny bone that day.
Yeah.
It was a good deadpan line. Very good.
It was one of the better delivered lines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to dog on Henry Cavill. I've been a fan of his since the Tudors, so
me too.
I just don't care for him.
Brandon.
I just don't care for him as Superman, but that's besides the point. He's better with a sword in his hand, as far as I'm concerned, than a cape on his back.
I think he may agree with you, because he turned down, I think, Superman to do the Witcher. I think I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, he did turn down. He's turned down. I don't know for what, but he has turned down doing more Superman.
Marvel, yeah.
DC because Warner Brothers dicked him around for too many years.
Yeah.
So, all right, Max, scene you most hated.
He did.
Is there one?
Not really. Nothing that really stands out as like, like did not like the scene, like it was badly directed or anything like that. If you're talking like a villain scene, it had to be obviously the bad wizard, but otherwise.
I mean, there wasn't anything I hated. I mean, I was kind of grossed out about how the water looked when she was going to drink it out of the tree. And it just, I wouldn't want to even pretend to drink that. That looked gross. It looked like something out of a silicone implant. That's what it looked like to me. But my big complaint was the damn cinematography in Brokilon Forest just bugged me. And that's the closest I can come to saying a scene that I hated. What about you, Jen?
I think it's not hate, but it's the weakest. It's just the weakest. Even though it was in the books, the Brokilon Forest, so they changed some things that happened. It's very much, they didn't create it for the show. It's part of the Witcher books, the series. But obviously they knew, because of the title of the banquets and everything, the title of the show gives it away. This is going to be your main focus, is the engagement feast and the law of surprise, right? That's given. It's a dead giveaway. The whole thing with Yenn, oddly enough, that's the one thing that was a little bit of Netflix frill, which wasn't Sapkowski written. They did that themselves, and I think that held up stronger than the Dryad Forest. If I had not read the books and it was just filthy casual and I was just enjoying the show for the first time, I would look at it and be like, they just made up that whole thing with Ciri and the forest because it seems the weakest, even though that is incorrect.
Because it doesn't have one of the key elements, one of the two blades. One of the two blades is missing.
Yeah. It just it's not bad, like you said. I didn't hate it, which is technically the question here, but it just the pacing, it didn't. I was like, okay, like let's get back to the engagement feast, or let's go back to the Yenn fighting and the baby. Like to me, that's just how I took it, as just entertainment. That's all. Nothing bad. It's just I was underwhelmed at the forest scene with the Dryads.
Okay, so let's move on to the next section, best and worst actors or best and worst casting. Does anybody have a pick for that?
I liked Queen Calanthe. She did a good job.
I love Queen Calanthe. It's I don't remember her name, Toby something. It's got a guy's name. It sounds like a guy's name.
She did a really good job. Because she's not someone that you're like overly affectionate towards. Even in the books, the same exact kind of like brash character, who's very rash and you don't agree with all the judgments, but who's still a capable queen in her own right, for sure. I really did enjoy her energy into Queen Calanthe. She did a very good job. I liked her a lot.
Jodhi May, Jodhi May is her name. And yeah, she's my pick too for best actor.
Hands down.
I liked her in the first episode, the one where she dies in the first episode. I know others are a little bugged out by how long it takes for her to lay there and die.
I was. That's what I said. That's exactly what I said.
But I personally like her, for the role in both episodes. Is it just the 2 episodes she's in? Every time she appears as Queen Calanthe, she's just awesome.
She embodies Queen Calanthe to me. She is exactly how she comes across in the books, to a T.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I like East Tursik, her husband, the one who ends up being her husband.
Yes.
I like him too.
I like him too.
His energy, especially in the very first episode, when he's sitting there joking around with Ciri while Calanthe's knighting all the night, dubbing the knights. The two of them are back to just chatting away, and I enjoyed that. And in this episode, Iced, I mean, he jumps right in with Dooney and Geralt. It's like, this is wrong. I'm standing up for what's right. And the guy just plays him. I like it, both of them. The Cintran royalty, I've just been really happy with on this show.
Me too.
Oh, I'm thinking about the episode as a whole, and like the scene with Yennefer and the baby, at least kind of for me, showed that her character is empathetic towards, besides just her own selfish things.
Yeah.
So I think as an actor, she did a pretty decent job at that, showing that she had an emotional range to show empathy for this generally selfish kind of character.
Yeah, she is pretty selfish to start, but I mean, can you blame her from where she came from?
And
No.
then the guy I played, I'm gonna call him Hedgehog. I think he did a pretty decent job.
Goonie?
I think he did a pretty decent job at that character.
Yeah, he acted well through that latex, all that
Mhm.
rubber.
He did.
I think the makeup was pretty good on him. There was some, I liked it, but you know, I can see why you'd think it's a little bit wonky at times. I mean,
It reminded me of like Kirk guy going to the alien planet and seeing the river suit a little bit the hedgehog version of that. They did a much better job, obviously.
yeah,
Yes, I really like Duty too. I agree with you both. He did act very well. That had to be very difficult as an actor. I could be wrong, but before we went on, I was reading something about, I don't know the actress's name, the one who plays Yennefer.
Anya Chalotra.
Thank you. Yes, her.
Yes, I know my baby's name.
They were talking about for auditions for the role of Yennefer, and that scene wasn't in the book, so it's not like they could rehearse for that. I think it was one of like the audition scenes to get the part that they gave people who were trying out for this role, because obviously that was a Netflix invention and it would just be something that would pop. It's very important that you see Yennefer like humanized in that way. And they say that I think it's one of the reasons why she got the part of Yennefer is actually the baby scene. I could be wrong, but I was reading something about an interview where that was definitely one of the factors.
It's a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, and it ties into the themes too. I mean, that we'll be talking about in just a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when she said, "And face it, you're a girl. What chance did you have, anyways?" In that world, you know, yeah, she's the daughter of a king, but not gonna have, you know, daughters of kings have it even worse than peasant women, because they have to marry who they're told to marry, and they're just given away at like the age of 12 to 14. Here, you belong to them now.
Yeah.
And that's like, that doesn't happen to the peasant women.
No.
So Max, any other actors? What about a worst actor? Was there a worst performance? I didn't see one. Oh, I also got to say, Mousak was awesome. I don't know the actor's name, but he's just so fun as Mousak.
Wasn't he the guy from The Good Place?
I don't know.
That was created by the lady. I want to say it's him, but I'm not sure.
I don't know. Maybe. I haven't seen it, unfortunately. Sorry.
Oh, wow. I don't even recognize him without a beard. Adam Levy is his name. Wow, he's shaved. Wow, it just does not look. Wow.
Oh, so no, the guy I'm thinking of is Jason Mantzoukas.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why, but that's who I think it is when I saw him.
He's got Adam Levy's got a couple of titles here on his IMDb that I recognize, some of which I've seen, some of which I just know of, but he's been around since '95. It's his earliest credit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, Mousak is also, I every time Mousak shows up, I got to give props, because he's just.
Me too.
He's so fun.
He seems like the trustworthy guy, even though like he may have some stuff on the side that he's trying to keep hidden, but he just seems like just so amiable, I guess is the word I would use for him. Like, I don't know.
He and Geralt are the two characters that are in both short stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the very end of the Sword of Destiny, once they're out of Brokilon Forest, they run into those bandits. And then Geralt fights the bandits, the Dryads help kill the bandits, and then there's Mousak on a horse, Uncle Mousak.
There he is.
Got all excited, you know. So he was in both short stories, which makes it even more odd that they chose to pair these two short stories together in one episode.
So Discord had tossed in two pictures. The top is that Jason guy, and the other one guy plays Mousesack.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That's why
Wow.
I was like, I see those two, and like they look. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
That's why my mind
Whoa.
immediately goes to the Good Place guy because he plays this idiot.
That's uncanny. Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
clearly there's differences, but
Right.
in my mind, and I may not have the best visual memory, but to me, it's like I think of the Good Place. I think of the idiot guy from the Good Place, and I see Mousesack, like that's the same guy, right? No, they're not.
No.
I've never watched The Good Place. That's the one with Veronica Mars, right?
Mm,
Kristen Bell.
yes,
Yes.
It's the one with the older white-haired,
Yeah.
dignified looking
from
gentleman.
CSI
Ted
Vegas
Danson.
later seasons.
Yes.
Cheers. So let's move on to the big meaty question. And Jen, we'll go to you first.
Okay.
How well did the show handle the themes and ideas from the book? And what do you think those themes and ideas from the book in these two short stories are about?
It's a mixed bag. Mostly the main theme, like the banquet, like the title, they handled that 100% just like the book, and very well as far as destiny goes. Extremely exemplary is what I would use. With Yennefer, it's kind of odd because they're introducing her humanity and her backstory as soon as you get to know her, like as soon as she appears on screen. In the books, you see her cold and resigned first, and it's not until later that you hear about Yennefer's backstory, and they're doing it differently that way because maybe they don't want there to be any sort of friction between the character and the audience. They're giving you, yes, this is who she is, and you come up with her to see, kind of her, obviously she was a hunchback, and then she went through that, and that she's had the infertility issues and that sort of thing. So they're driving that right at the forefront, which is a just abrupt departure from how the books go, but I understand why they're doing it. So that theme isn't even supposed to be happening at this point in time in the books. So so I like how they're doing it, but it is intentionally different, and I kind of like that spin. Ciri is left, I would think, if I didn't know anything about the books and I was just trying to watch it and I understood that the time skip going on, which is an entirely different conversation, I'm tabling that, Ciri would just be confusing to me because like I wouldn't know if she is really good or like bad, or what her powers meant, or like what's going on. So they're kind of the same situation in the books for a little bit, but the theme, I guess the overall theme of just destiny, which is I guess the entire thing of the books and the show,
Both short stories.
very, very well. But with Yennefer, I don't see a lot of destiny at play. Yennefer I see as the antithesis to destiny because she's going along by the force of her own will. Her will got her out of her, like, making her way through being a sorceress. Her, choosing to not have the meds and go through her transformation, her willing herself into the places that she is. I see Ciri and Geralt as products of destiny, and they work the best they can with destiny kind of leading them on, like bull, like yoking.
Right.
Yennefer is the antithesis to that. Yennefer is
Okay.
will, like, you know what I mean, iron force of herself pushing back against her destiny, which was just supposed to be like a child that was like beaten and like almost slavery situation. So I kind of like that. You have Geralt and Ciri as the two people that are destined for each other, which is exactly like it is in the books. And then you have Yennefer, that is an entirely different force, if you will, since force is something that we talk about throughout the books and everything. Yennefer is a sorceress, but what her real force is, her real magic is the will to use it in the way that she does. Because you can be the strongest sorceress in the world, and if you just like don't have your own goals and just work for other people, then you're just kind of like mindlessly shuffling along. But Yennefer doesn't have that. She has her own agenda. So I kind of like that. I kind of like how, you know, you have Geralt who is nothing, but who's trapped by destiny, and then you have
He doesn't even believe in it.
Yeah, but he doesn't, but he's like kind of goaded along, and then you have Yennefer who's like just coming along like a ball of fire crashing into his life, going like, I'm living completely the way that I want to. Destiny, what's that? I make my own rules. So I kind of like that. I kind of like the two themes opposing each other there. And I like that anyway.
So no, my question for this is like the baby scene with fertility is kind of foreshadowing Yennefer's evolution towards, you know, wanting to resolve that.
Wanting a
Would
child.
foreshadowing be destiny?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, definitely. Because it's foreshadowing the destiny, you know. And I think this episode's probably the one that actually turned her from not caring about being able to have a kid or not to, I think this is where, at least on the show, her mind switches, where that switch goes and she now wants to be a mother, which she had not wanted before, at least on the show. I don't know where I would peg that in the books. I'd have to go back and reread and re-listen to everything, if there's even a moment where that happens, or if it just, she comes onto the scene already. And she does come onto the scene already wanting to be a mother, because that was the last wish. That was, and she was trying to use the genie. That's her introduction in the books.
Right.
And that's where she becomes entangled in destiny. Until that story, until that encounter, she doesn't have a destiny that she's entangled with yet. It's a certain wish that somebody makes that ties her into their destiny. But that's an issue for another episode.
So, you know, speaking of destiny, we have the Ciri scene. In the book, if I'm not misremembering it, Geralt kind of shrugged off destiny, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not real. He doesn't believe it.
What about Ciri? Did she?
Oh, Ciri, at the end of this short story, she's yelling, "I'm your destiny. You can't get away from me. I'm your destiny."
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, in the book, the theme was like he was rejecting destiny before kind of accepting it. So I don't know if the forest scene really paired that with the book as well, maybe.
Well, the irony is it I don't think any of the dialogue is in the episode, but when you go back and you read A Question of Price at the banquet, Geralt goes on a little spiel lecturing everybody about destiny. You got to do this, because it's destiny. Destiny has its way. You can't deny it. And then short stories later, nope, destiny is bullshit. I don't believe in it, Eithne. You know, I don't care what you druids say. I don't care what they say about, you know, the sword of destiny has two blades. I don't believe in that. Even though 15 years ago, he was preaching to a banquet hall of people, you need to pay attention to destiny. I find that kind of ironic, and I wonder why Geralt had that attitude change, or if he was just bullshitting everybody in the banquet hall.
Well, you know, my perspective is that he would have a child he didn't want that he has to take care of. And he's like, no, I don't want that. He wants to go hunt some, Kikimori?
Yeah, what are you going to do? Make her a girl witcher? There's no girl witchers. Tell that to somebody.
Yeah.
Man, that was what I was looking forward to in season 2, and I got some of that.
A little bit.
There's a lot that I don't know if they're going to do on the show that I hope they do. And we do note she had her little trip to the desert. That was a nod to a short story, to a story you'll read later, but there's a little nod to that. I don't know if you've gotten that far yet, Max, but
nope.
Ciri will meet the sand, just like she did in this episode for a brief moment.
Yeah, brief.
But that tree was, I don't know, that was just, I'm just puzzled by everything in Brokilon in this episode.
Yeah, it was the weakest in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know how
That's
they
not
could
that
have
it's
done it better, but I don't know. It seemed to be detracting from the overall greater arc of what was going on with Yennefer and Geralt at the time.
yeah, because Destiny is one of the other big themes that this series has.
Yeah.
Right up there with racism sucks.
Yeah.
I think those are probably the two biggest themes that you could say that the series has overall, and you see it even in these early stuff.
If you want to talk about expanded themes for the show, the whole women aspect of it being like property for men is a big theme of this particular episode as well.
Yeah,
Is you have it with the banquet and you have it with Yennefer and the baby child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And like the queen is like, assassins go after her just because she's not getting heirs.
right.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Dooney though, and wanting Pavetta, aside from the two of them having fallen in love with each other,
Yep.
it actually had nothing to do with her gender, because I'm separating Dooney wanting Pavetta entirely from the banquet. Okay. Has nothing to do with it. It's all about that child of destiny.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't have mattered if it was a boy. That child of destiny would have belonged to him,
Mm-hmm.
according to the traditions of this world. So while everything else dealing with Pavetta in this episode does tie into the way especially noble women were treated, with Dooney, it's a little bit yes and a little bit no.
He was kind of doing what Geralt was doing. He didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And then did they like meet and not know about it, or did he like know who she was when they met?
Wait, when you're
You're
talking about
Ciri?
No, Pavetta.
No, he didn't.
No,
Dooney
he
met
didn't
Pavetta.
Yeah, but did he know about who she was and that?
Yeah,
their connection.
That's why he went look to see what she looked like. But regardless if she had been a boy, that boy child would have been, according to the law of surprise, Dooney's as well. So in those instances, the gender is besides the point. As to the banquet itself, yeah, that's banquet for the to find who's going to get the princess's hand. Yeah, that seems like something that probably happened in the real world way too many times.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other themes that I think was discussed, especially in the short story, the Sword of Destiny, is the whole sovereignty and of Brokilon Forest. Their independence and freedom from mankind, who just wants to come and chop down all the trees because they need new tables and they want they want all this other stuff. They want to just use up all the wood, so they're going to chop down all the great old trees from Brokilon Forest. That's what all those kings want. And so in this episode, we don't see it portrayed as much because we don't have Geralt there talking to Queen Eithne in Brokilon Forest, but there was that whole bit where Dara and Ciri Dara at least was being shot at for approaching because they didn't want menfolk to approach. They let Ciri come in, but because they'll take little girls because they want to make new Dryads. But yeah, that was another issue that's it was left off the show, I think, that should have been approached, but because I think that was part of what he was talking about in Sword of Destiny, the relationships between all the human kingdoms and Brokilon Forest and everybody wanting it for themselves.
Yeah.
And how there used to be Dryads all over the place, which was mentioned in the episode, but were there any? Go ahead.
There's like in the books, there's this pervasive sense of like the annihilation, like the extinction of like monster races is just Geralt. The reason why he's nomadic, and I don't think this is translated well to Netflix. if there's one thing that is a disconnect there, is the fact that why is Geralt like, you think it's because people are ostracizing him because they don't like witchers, which is true, but in the books it's not so much that everybody just hates the Witcher, because obviously people talk to him when he rides into town, obviously he wouldn't get jobs, but it's the fact that he literally cannot find any. The Witchers are, obviously what's going on at Kaer Morhen is a whole other issue, but like there's not a lot, and people like him have to be driven to the far ends of the earth just to find any work, because it's just the humans are just encroaching on everything, and it's like this ticking time bomb, and you don't really get that in the show, but it was very it's like almost heavy, and it's weird because the more books you read, the heavier it feels, like it with that, like it's you almost are like, are we the baddies? Like,
yeah, and that's
like,
one of the
kind
things that comes,
like the situation.
that's one of the things that comes into play with the novel Season of Storms, which I've already spoiled on the show once, and I'll spoil it again. The wizards are the ones who made most of these monsters, and because of what happens in that story, that novel, it kind of stops for the most part, and Geralt's now just occasionally finding monsters that were created, but there are people who actively do propaganda against witchers because they don't like the fact that the witchers are killing off their creations.
Right.
And that's part of why wizards, despite what Stregobor might have said in the first short story,
I hate
the
him.
one in that one short story, there are other reasons why the wizards hate witchers. Not even druids are all happy with witchers, but they're friendlier.
So, one thought I had about the Witcher thing is, remember these sorcerers, and they had the girls that didn't quite make the cut, and they turned them into the eels.
Yeah.
My thought was like, is that what theoretically that's what a male Witcher is, kind of, sort of. Like if they were a male wizard that didn't quite make the cut, they could be turned into a Witcher.
No. Witchers
Had they got all their training, obviously.
Yeah. Witchers are created from childhood.
Yep.
Yeah. As young boys.
But Netflix, would they have a reason to kind of avoid the environmental side of it?
No. I just think they didn't have time for it. They didn't find time for it in this episode. Or so far.
I don't know why they don't pursue that. I don't know.
I
don't know. That's a good
I'll have
question.
to watch through both seasons again to see if it's addressed in any particular episode before we cover it. But I don't think they ever discuss it at all. I mean, it's not a very heavy. Well,
yeah.
I mean, it is there. It is pretty much there in Sapkowski's writing.
I was saturated with it when I was reading it. Maybe that's my takeaway, and it's very possible that's just how I took it. But I was,
like my thought is like, did they avoid the topic of possible environmentalism or other issues like that, so they would get more viewers?
As a matter of fact, spoiler, 3, 2, 1. There's an environmental collapse coming.
yeah.
Now it's way in the future, and it's all basically Milankovitch cycles. You're familiar with those, right, Max? The long cycle where the tilt of the earth and the distance and all that, how it all works out. So and eventually we're going to have an ice age. Well, they've got an ice age coming.
Yep. That's in the games.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah. Now, they do pretty much make it clear in the book that it's not like thousands of years.
No.
Yep.
But there's somebody who's supposed to do something to stop it. And I did ask the person that was supposed to, I'm remembering that never happened, did it? It being stopped. I don't remember that. Yeah.
But my thought is like, do you think Netflix may have avoided this issue entirely, either to not get to that plot line right away, or because they just want more viewers, not to get divisive over environmental issues?
They may be bringing it up in subsequent seasons because they kind of touched on it more on a potential story arc in season 2, but we're not discussing that right now.
Right.
So that may be in like season 3 and going forward, because they opened at least the doorway, if you will, from how they ended season 2, but I don't know
Right.
how far on that Merry Brick Road they're gonna go.
Yeah.
So possibly, I don't know. Like,
I think if you were to go through Netflix's catalog of new stuff over the last few years, you'd find at least a handful of shows or movies that had environmentalism as a theme. It's in there somewhere. I don't know everything Netflix has in most recent years.
me neither.
You know,
I seem to recall they had some that's on both sides that can be a little on the flaky.
Okay.
So
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't explore Netflix. I only watch stuff on Netflix as needed or as desired. I don't explore it. So, but I probably, if I was to look, I could probably find you a bunch of things that had. So I don't think Netflix is trying to avoid it. I think the producer, showrunner, and the writing staff just are skipping it for now.
Yep.
Is how I would put it. All right, so down to the rating. How as close as an adaptation to the source material, 1 to 10, would you give this? Max?
Well, right, maybe a 7 or an 8, because like the wedding scene's like obviously a 10. The wood scene maybe 5 because Geralt's not there. So averaging it out probably around that 7, 8 area.
So what number am I putting on the screen?
Say 7.5.
Okay. Jen?
I have to give it a 5, not because it's because technically the whole thing with Yennefer and the baby didn't happen either.
Yeah.
So that, like, I 100% agree with Max. The banquet scene is aces, 10.
Pretty close.
But the whole thing with Yennefer, like, technically didn't happen, and the whole thing with Ciri, though close, was they handled it in a completely different kind of way. So
And they didn't
unfortunately, unfortunately, because of the 3 people, Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer, only Geralt had a very almost true to it. So because of that, even though it was resoundingly Geralt's, like, that part was the main focus of the episode and the title, I guess I have to give it like I have to put a 5, even though it's a reluctant 5. So that's going to be my answer.
If I was to break it up, Geralt and the Calanthe in the Cintra storyline, I give it a 9 out of 10. I mean, there were some minor changes, little things left off, little things added, but yeah, I'd get a 9 out of 10 for the Cintra storyline. Brokilon Forest, I give it a 6. You know, so, and the Yennefer thing, I don't think that extra storyline is messing, in my opinion, with how well it's adapting the
No, I
source
loved it.
material. It's an addition to the source material, so I'm perfectly fine with it. It doesn't take anything off. So I'd say if you add all that together for the episode, I'm going to have to say a 7.5 on accuracy. How much I enjoyed it if I had never seen it? Well, I can tell you from 2 years ago when I first watched this episode, like I said, this is the one I remember the most. This is the one I had the most fun with. I give it a 9 out of 10 for enjoyment. If I hadn't read the material. Jen, sorry.
Yeah, Jenn is a good. It's Guinevere if you would even go farther down.
Hey.
But yes, I would agree with you. I'm fully aces, 9 out of 10. It was very enjoyable, very good, solid.
Maximus.
So when I watched this when it first came out, and from before I rewatched it, I didn't remember this very much at all, like vaguely. So I'd say about an 8.
Okay. Not bad. So that's like a 7, an 8, and a 9, something like that.
But like overall, just because of that one when I rewatched it, just the deadpan alone gives it a 9. That brings it up to a 9.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna have to bleep so many times in this episode. I'll put that shot. I just wish I could get subtitles on the shot when I insert it, but the editor doesn't pick up subtitles. Now the last one. What would we rate the episode overall, all above factors considered? I'm gonna give it a 9. Even though there was just some other issues, I think the 9 I give it for how much I enjoyed it and how much I enjoyed it before is strong enough of a 9 to not average out and go lower. It's to pull what's low or higher. So yeah, I'll go a 9 for overall on this episode. I think it's the best of the 4 so far. Max?
I already said.
Go for the overall? Okay.
Yeah.
I missed that. I thought you were meaning overall and enjoyment. Okay. My mistake.
And overall was like 9 because of the.
Okay. So Jenn.
9.
9.
Enjoyment factor. Yeah.
Enjoyment. Overall.
Totally. Full camp, a fun family romp. It was very fun with a touching Yennefer scene in there. Yennefer at her most vulnerable, but also very powerful as well in that episode. Very good.
I don't know why she didn't kill the bug right away though. She
Yeah.
did it when she came back, usually, and it died. Once the queen was killed.
Mhm.
Yen could have done that to start with, and
She
they never
could've.
would have. Yeah, and
Maybe it was destiny.
So there's one little plot hole I have in it, but it's in an additive story. Any other thoughts, you guys? No, I
Good
had
for
a
now.
great time having you back, Jen.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, especially since it was at such short notice.
Oh yeah, it's fun. I enjoy talking about The Witcher. It's great.
And we'll definitely be seeing more of you. Going to be having you on again. Might even have you filling in for me if that's necessary. But
Hopefully not. But,
yeah, hopefully not. But I would appreciate it if it does happen.
Okay.
I'll have to do all the editing still, but I can do that.
Well, never let Dandelion invite you to a wedding because you might just end up with a child, I guess.
Yeah. 16 years later.
Surprise! Literally,
Definitely
that's what it's
childish,
called. The
but-
law of surprise.
And I did some research. There actually is in Eastern Europe a bit of a tradition very close to the law of surprise.
Is there? I was not aware
Yes.
of that.
I looked it up and I was reading and found some articles, and yeah, it wasn't quite as elaborate as this, at least I don't think, and it wasn't
Yeah.
used as much, but I saw a couple of things that were talking about that in Eastern, some Eastern European traditions have a law of surprise, like, type scenario that I'm like, well, that's interesting.
It is.
I thought the law of surprise was something he made up on his own, but when I looked it up the other day, I was like, wow. So, well, that wraps it up for another episode of What the Adaptation. We'll return next week when we discuss the episode 105, Bottled Appetites, based on the short story, The Last Wish. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave us a like and a comment, and don't forget to be awesome.